You really don't want to be attracting rats to your compost system for 3 reasons. First of all, they can get into your car, they'll eat the wire and the insulation, and they can totally destroy your car. They can get into your house, they'll eat the insulation in your house and your wires. And thirdly, your neighbors will be really upset if you're attracting rats. So here at UC Santa Cruz, we've been trying to design compost systems that rats can't get into. So this is part of the UCSC Compost Engineering Challenge, and together with the students we're trying to build a system that is DIY, cheap, and especially rat proof and plastic free. So this is attempt number 6 or 7 to try to build a rat proof compost system that doesn't have plastic. This design is a winning design, we hope, and it's called the Rat Begoner. So let's go through some of the materials that are needed. To build the Rat Begoner, you're going to need the following materials. The dimensions of the system are designed to satisfy the capacity of a family of about 4 or 5, so this should be enough for you year round. This piece of plywood has dimensions of 4 feet by 26 inches. This happens to be a 1-inch piece of plywood. You don't need something this thick, probably 3/4 inch is fine, but when I went to the hardware store, they had a scrap handy that I used. And we're going to paint this with exterior paint to make it more solid. We want to build a compost system that's going to last you 10 or more years. So we're going to build a box. These 2x4s are cut to 4 feet to align with the lid. These are going to be on the inside attached to these posts like this. So be careful here, even though the lid has a length of 26 inches, these inner pieces have a length of 23 inches to account for the width of these 2x4s. Noting that depending on if you get rough cut or smooth cut, you may need to adjust the length of this inner piece of wood here. These posts are solid redwood posts. They're 4x4s. These are rough cut, and we cut them to 18 inches in height, and you need 4 of these. Then this entire box is going to be wrapped in galvanized wire mesh. This is an important part of the design. We want air to flow in the composting system because we want your compost system to stay anaerobic, meaning it needs oxygen. If it becomes anaerobic, it's going to become slimy and develop bad kinds of bacteria, and it will also generate methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas, and we're trying to avoid generating methane. So this is all going to have a lot of oxygen flowing through it, keeping it aerobic. This is critical for keeping it rat proof. You need a very fine mesh. Do not use chicken wire. Chicken wire, first of all, will rust. It won't last for 10 years. And secondly, the typical chicken wire mesh, rats and mice can get through it. So you can see this is a fine mesh, probably a 1-inch mesh is fine. And this is galvanized, very solid wire that we're going to use to wrap it. This is the key to the success of the Rat Begoner. Is we're going to use this corner bead. We haven't tested it, so let's see how it goes. But we're going to use this to wrap the corners of the lid, because we've noticed that the rats tend to chew into the sides of the lid. Other pieces of hardware you'll need are some poultry staples. This is to attach the wire. Get some really solid ones. We want the wire to be very strongly attached. These are an innovation that we came up with here at UCSC. These are ties to tie wood together. We're actually going to use it to really keep that wire in place. And these are hinges. We're going to use these to attach the lid to the box. I got 3. We probably only need 2, but I really want this to be solid.
Okay, so we started with building the ends of the boxes. We connected these 18-inch tall post beams to these 23-inch pieces of wood that we cut. And it's important to make sure that they line up so that the lid of the bed can fit in right. So we attach that here and here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this 4-foot beam that we cut and attach it long ways here on both sides and wrap the whole thing in wire mesh. And we use these galvanized screws. You don't have to use the exact same kind, but this is what we used. And yeah. Okay, so I'm drilling in the top part of the edges of our box. And I've made sure that these are 23 inches long on both sides. So I've made sure this is square, and I'm clamping it down just to make sure that when I'm drilling it in, it's not moving around or anything. So I've already drilled pilot holes where the screws are gonna go, and now it's time to screw it in.
Okay, we've now built the frame. Now we're going to wrap the frame with this hard cloth, and that's going to keep the mice and rats out. Okay, so this mesh here is about a 1/4 inch mesh. It should be fine enough to keep the rats out. Rats will get through something that's a bit bigger than an inch, and we're hoping it'll also be fine enough to keep the mice out. So we're going to cut this to size and wrap it around. Now before we cut it to size, we cut an extra piece of 2x4 here that we're going to nail here, and we're going to use this to anchor the wire when we wrap it around. So at this, we really want to make this as tight as possible. So in the end, we're going with an even finer mesh. This is 1/8 of an inch, so definitely the mice are not going to get through that one. Now cutting this mesh is the most annoying part of the whole project, and we'll talk through how we did that in a second. But we first cut it to length, and we're wrapping it around the whole box, and you can see this is where the two pieces are going to come together and attach to this extra 2x4 that we added.
So we used some screws and we drilled in the mesh to the top and the bottom. We use screws because in case it's not perfectly aligned, we can unscrew it and pull it to the side and fix it. And we want to make sure that it's tight so rats don't get in underneath. And it's important to make sure your screws don't poke out the backside. So make sure you have a good length for a screw.
We did some experimentation, and we actually discovered that simple garden clippers seem to work pretty well with this wire. It's the easiest thing I've tried so far. The snips don't really have the right angle, but look, this cuts pretty easily and nice and straight. So in the future, on the next round, it might be easier to cut this to size on the ground and then attach it. This will be pretty easy. All right, in the end, we finished it off with the garden snips. We decided that was easier. So we've now cut it to the right size. The length, we made it so that there's overlap here because we want these two sides to come together. You definitely don't want any little bows where the rats can squeeze in, so it has to be really tight. By the way, really good idea to work with gloves when you're working with this stuff because it really cuts your hands up, and we should be wearing gloves to work with it. So now we're going to continue around the bottom with some screws to hold it in place. Then we're going to go and hammer in these upholstery staples. We want to keep it all as tightly fastened as possible. And in some places, just to be double sure, there are these ties. We're just going to go and bang them in. So that, for example, here, see this, this bow? A rat or a mouse could squeeze in through here. And so we're going to tighten this up so that it can't squeeze through there. Okay, we've been putting in a whole bunch of these little U-nails here, making it really nice and tight. Also focusing on putting quite a few at the top here. We don't want this to bend over when we shut the lid. We had a buckle here, so we put this tie in. This is fun to hammer it in. Takes quite a bit of hammering, but it'll really hold it tight. And then here, these are designed to overlap. We don't want the rats coming in through here. We're going to put a couple of these along here to keep it nice and tight. And then when we put the bottom piece in, we're going to fold the bottom piece over, again to create overlap and make sure the bottom piece overlaps here and seal this all really nice and tight around. And then we'll put the lid on.
Okay, so we attached the mesh all the way around and put these ties in along here so that no rats can get in, even if they were to crawl in this side. And then we wrapped the bottom with a piece of mesh and nailed that all along the side. Folded it in and just made it like a little bottom. Okay, so we screwed in the hinges and we started with the sides and made sure they were good and secure, and then did the middle hinge. And so this side is secured.
But when we did that, you can see what happens, and this is the big weak point of these designs, is it kind of lifted the lid here, and this gap here is often what we've seen to be the failure mode. You know, rats could definitely get in here, and they also like to chew along here, so this is what we're going to work on next. So we're not putting the lid on. As we've talked about before, the lid is the main area that we've noticed rats entering. So this is where we have our innovation. We're going to use this flashing. This is just flashing board from the hardware store, but we picked a size that was not too big and not too small. And you can see we're now attaching it to the lid. So what this does is it's going to prevent rats from chewing on the edge, but also entering through little gaps under the lid. We're going to put this all the way around, and in the back we're going to put some smaller flashing. Now, cutting this stuff is not super easy, but we were able to cut it with some little metal snips, or if you want a cleaner cut, you can use a skill saw with a metal blade, but that's a bigger lift in terms of equipment. It's not super clean, but you can cut it with the metal snips. And then James is going to show you how we attach this onto the lid.
All right, so we cut our flashing to the lengths that we want, and now we're gonna attach it. So we have a hole punch, which we're gonna use to sort of put a hole where the screw is gonna go in on the flashing. And you basically just pick your spot and hit it with a hammer, and it goes in. So let's do that right now. All right, so now you see we have a hole in there, and we're ready to put our screw in. So we're gonna use these galvanized roofing screws. They have this little washer sort of thing on the top to hold down the metal flashing that we're using. And we're using this socket wrench to attach it. And because of the sharpness of these screws and the softness of this wood, we can actually just sort of use force. We don't even need a drill or anything. And you just start it by pushing down a little bit. And once you feel like you've gotten it in, you just turn it tight.
Okay, at the back here, we put a little piece of this corner bead just to prevent them from getting in through the back. I honestly don't think they're gonna get through because this is really tightly held with these braces here, but this I had to trim it a little bit because it was a bit too long. You could also put a little piece of another piece of this mesh if you wanted, or you could just leave it off and hope they don't get in through the back, but that's an option. Over here we attached two little side handles so we can carry it. We're going to put a handle mechanism on the lid, and then we're going to test it out. All right, we've now installed this in its final position, and we've added these handles. So these are designed so that when you come and put your compost in, when you open it up, there's always a bunch of flies, little bugs. That's totally normal, it's part of composting, but you don't want them flying in your face. So you can kind of open it up, let them fly out, do their thing, and then put your compost in. The way this works, you fill it up on one side, and then you slowly move over here, and then you harvest from one side as you continue to fill on the other side. This can be used as a vermicompost if you put it in the shade. So you'll notice we've put it under this tree in a nice shady area. Worms will happily live in here. However, you do need to know that they don't like sunlight, but we do want aeration. One thing you could do is put a bit of shade cloth around this to keep it a little shadier, and your worms will be happier. But they will live happily in here, and you could just harvest it. And I just put it in the garden. Your worm population will continue to survive as long as you have enough organic matter in one side of the box. In terms of the lid, better not to put these little screws in here. We had a bit of an issue. If this is too tight, it starts to hook. You can just come and bend it out a little bit, and maybe better not to put these side screws in. So this is now ready to be tested. We're going to test it for rats. We have nice yummy rat dinner, Snicker bars. We'll probably put some peanut butter in here. This is irresistible and delicious. We're going to put it in here, and then over here, James is going to show you we have infrared camera that we're setting up to look at activity. And one of the lessons that we've learned is that if you pick a random design off the internet that says it's rat proof, it probably isn't. We've tested a bunch and they're often not. So if you look at random designs on the internet, think about whether they're testing it at this level with the mesh and the proofing and the infrared camera, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time and money building a system that then later fails, as we have built many systems that have failed. All right, I'm going to put this in and get our infrared camera going. Alright, we've tested the system with the infrared cameras. You saw rats trying to get in, but they actually haven't gotten in so far. We've also haven't seen any evidence of chewing, so we're going to go ahead and start filling this up, and our next video will be showing you how to use the system.